Amara stood tall in class and announced with pride, "My mom is in Congress." The teacher chuckled. The class carried on. But no one expected what would happen when her mother arrived in person. "Name someone in government you admire," said Mr. Penley, clicking the cap off his whiteboard marker like it was part of some ceremony. "It could be a senator, a governor, even a local mayor. Go ahead, raise your hand." 12-year-old Amara Blake didn't hesitate. Her hand shot up before most of her classmates even looked up from their desks. Mr. Penley scanned the room, then gave her a nod and a half-smile. "All right, Amara, let's hear it." She sat straighter in her chair. "My mom." She paused. Mr. Penley tilted his head, puzzled. "Your mom?" Amara nodded firmly. "She's in Congress. Her name is Jasmine Crockett." The classroom fell into stunned silence. Then came a chuckle, sharp, quick, not from a student, but from Mr. Penley himself. "Okay," he said, turning back to the board. "Marker scratching. Besides fictional characters?" Amara's lips parted slightly as if to speak, but nothing came out. She stared straight ahead. No one defended her, not even her best friend Elise, who was sitting 2 seats away, glancing between Amara and the board like she didn't know where to look. The teacher moved on. "Anyone else? Someone real. Real. Someone current. Someone real." Amara swallowed hard. Her chest burned. She sank lower into her seat, hoping to disappear behind the pink hoodie she wore nearly every Friday. She didn't hear the rest of the answers. Not when Landon said Ron DeSantis. Not when Maya said AOC. Not when Miter Penley added Obama like a token scribbled slanted in the corner at the end of the period. Amara packed her notebook slowly. The bell rang. Chairs screeched. Everyone poured out the door. No one said a word to her. Mr. Penley didn't even glance her way as he erased the board. But Amara's ears still rang with the sound of his chuckle. She walked through the hall with that feeling, not sadness, not exactly anger. Just like someone had pressed the mute button on her, as if her truth didn't count at lunch. She sat at the far end of the table. Elise didn't ask her about what happened. No one did. They talked about TikTok drama and who got new sneakers, and Amara smiled when someone looked her way, but it didn't reach her eyes when the final bell rang. She walked to the front pickup line without talking to anyone. Her mom pulled up in the black Toyo, the windows down. She looked radiant gold-hooped, sleek bob-tailored blazer, even on a casual Friday. "Hey, baby," Jasmine said, her voice warm like sunlight. "Like you all right?" Amara nodded fast, too fast. "Yeah, just tired." They drove home in quiet. What she wanted to say was, "He laughed at me, Mama, like I was making things up," but she didn't. Jasmine reached over, brushed Amara's curls behind her ear at a red light. "You know, you can tell me anything, right?" Amara nodded again. "I know," but she didn't say anything else. She wasn't sure she could. She sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window, past the grocery store, the gas station, the old white church with the crooked sign. Her world looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Something had shifted. It's one thing to be ignored. It's another to be laughed at for telling the truth. And in a school where nobody else had a mom like hers, Amara had never felt more alone. But the thing about silence is sometimes it builds until someone breaks it wide open. Amara Blake had always known her world looked a little different from her classmates. She lived on the south side of Fort Worth in a quiet brick house with a narrow driveway and a rusted basketball hoop that had seen better years inside. Though it felt alive. Plants in every corner, framed, art from black artists lining the walls and the scent of vanilla candles always lingering. From her mom's long workdays, her room was her own little universe, books stacked by the window sketch pads scattered across the desk. A corkboard covered in pins, goals, magazine cutouts, and at the center a photo of her mom standing on Capitol Hill, right hand raised. She wasn't just in politics. Jasmine Crockett. It was the real deal, and not the kind of person who forgot where she came from. Either before Congress, Jasmine had been a public defender in Dallas. She didn't grow up with money. Her mom had cleaned houses. Her dad laid drywall. Jasmine made it through law school by sheer force of will and 1H100 tiny miracles. And yet she never let any of it change how she walked in the world. Amara remembered the way Jasmine used to talk to her when she was younger, kneeling down eye level, saying things like, "You don't need to shrink. Baby people will try to make you feel small. Don't hand them the scissors." She carried that. With her still being a congresswoman's daughter wasn't as glamorous as some people thought it meant. Jasmine was always working late-night Zoom calls, meteor interviews from the car, long trips to Washington, D.C. But it also meant purpose power in a different sense. Not the showy kind. The kind that says, "I made it here and I'll make space for you too." Amara admired that more than anything she loved watching her mom get ready in the morning. The routine was clockwork coffee, first NPR playing low on the speaker suits, ironed and lined up, and always, always those gold hoops. Jasmine said they were her invisible armor. Still, no matter how busy her schedule, Jasmine always made time. Every Wednesday was movie night. Every Sunday was pancakes, burnt edges, and all. And when Amara had her first big science fair win last year, Jasmine flew home early just to be there. That's the part no one saw. Not the news interviews or C-SPAN sound bites, but the quiet parts, the gentle parts. So when Amara raised her hand in class and said, "My mom," it wasn't to brag. It wasn't a punchline, it was truth pride. But none of that mattered to someone like Mr. Penley. Did it? Amara had noticed the little things before, like how he always seemed surprised when she aced her pop quizzes, or how he double-checked her sources when she cited political articles. He didn't do that with others, and until now, she hadn't said anything. She just swallowed it and moved on. But this was different. This wasn't a look. This wasn't doubt hidden behind polite words. He laughed right in her face. And for what? For being proud of her mom for saying out loud what no one expected to hear from a girl like her. That night, she lay in bed with her headphones on, pretending to listen to music while staring at the ceiling. Her sketchpad sat unopened on her lap. Normally, she'd draw something Fashion Faces designs that came out of nowhere. But not tonight. Tonight felt heavier than usual. She kept replaying the moment over and over. The silence, the laugh, the way he moved on without another thought. Amara wasn't used to crying, not easily, but her eyes stung, and she didn't wipe the tears right away. Maybe if she let them fall, she wouldn't feel like she was holding everything back. But tomorrow was a new date, and the classroom still belonged to him for now. By Monday morning, the air in room 213 felt tighter somehow. Not hot, not cold, just thick, like it was holding something no one wanted to say. Amara walked in backpack, slung low hoodie pulled tight around her face. She didn't look up when she passed Mr. Penley's desk, didn't say good morning, didn't offer a smile. He didn't say anything either. The class settled in fast 30 desks, 2 flickering fluorescent lights, 1 clock that always ran 3 minutes slow, and a whiteboard with today's warm-up question already scribbled across the top. "What do your parents do? And what's one thing you admire about them?" Amara blinked at the words, just stared. She wasn't the first to notice the irony, but it hit her differently. Landon raised his hand right away, talking about how his dad managed a dealership in Arlington. "He always gets free hot dogs at the stadium," he added with a grin. Everyone laughed. Elise followed with "My mom's a corporate attorney. She doesn't sleep much, but she's a boss." A few girls clapped softly, impressed. Mr. Penley nodded. "Very cool, very admirable," he wrote. A few key words on the board. Leadership. Responsibility, drive, student after student, shared a nurse, a real. Estate agent, a physical therapist, and through it all, Amara sat. Still her hands stayed flat against her desk. One over the other, her heart thumped so loud it sounded like it had moved up into her throat when no one else raised their hand. Mr. Penley glanced around room. "Anyone else?" His eyes paused briefly on her, but then slid past. He didn't ask. He didn't offer. And that might have been worse than laughing, because now he wasn't denying her truth. He was pretending it didn't exist at all. The lesson moved on something about how government jobs help shape the community, something about civic engagement. Words floated around the room like fog. Amara couldn't concentrate. Every word felt like a scratch on a chalkboard. How could he teach about representation, about responsibility, when he just erased her mom from the board entirely when the bell finally rang? She stayed in her seat an extra beat. She watched as students filed out their chatterlight, their shoulders relaxed. No one else seemed to carry what she carried. She stood up slowly, but her steps were tight. Her hands balled up inside her sleeves in the hallway. Elise caught up to her hay. She said, "Okay." Amara gave the smallest shrug. "Fine." Elise hesitated. "You want to come over after school?" Amara looked at her for a second. "I can't. My mom's on a flight. She gets in late." Elise nodded. "Okay." But Amara saw the look, the quiet doubt, not cruel. But there, like even Elise, didn't know what to make of everything. Anymore, she turned and headed to her next class, earbuds in, but no music playing at lunch. She sat at the far end of the bench again. Some part of her wanted to speak up to say, "My mom's been on the House Oversight Committee. She's testified under oath. She passed real legislation." But what would be the point? She'd already spoken. She told the truth, and they laughed. So she sat, picked out her lunch, and kept quiet. That night, her mom called from the airport, made it through TSA. In one piece, she joked, "You good baby girl." Amara hesitated. She wanted to tell her she really did, but the words felt like bricked in her mouth. "Yeah," she said instead, "just tired." Same line, same lie. And Jasmine, tired herself, didn't push. "All right, I'll see you tomorrow." "Morning, love. You love you too." She hung up and stared at the phone in her hand. There was a storm inside her, but no place for it to go. So she did what she always did, kept it in. But storms have a way of finding their path. And this one was already gathering force. Tuesday evening in the Blake household was quiet, but not peaceful. The house was warm, lights low, the TV murmuring in the background with the news on mute. Jasmine sat at the kitchen island sorting through her inbox on a laptop, her reading glasses sliding down her nose. She looked sharp as always. Black sweater, gold chain, and nails freshly done. But the weariness clung to her shoulders. Amara sat across from her, tracing invisible patterns on the marble countertop, with one finger barely touching her bowl. Of mac and cheese, Jasmine glanced up. "You're not eating. I'm not really hungry." Her mom studied her for a second. "That's the third night in a row. You've barely touched dinner." Amara shrugged, eyes fixed on a chipped corner of the counter. "I had a big lunch," Jasmine exhaled softly. "You know, you can talk me right." Amara didn't answer, just nodded. But Jasmine didn't press, maybe because she recognized the look on her daughter's face. That quiet weight. The way kids wear their hurt like armor. She knew it all too well. Later that night, Jasmine knocked on Amara's door before entering. "I'm heading to bed," she said gently. "You need anything?" Amara shook her head. "I'm good." Jasmine started to turn away, but paused. "You sure school's been all right?" Amara hesitated. Her mouth opened, then closed. "Yeah, it's fine." She hated that word fine, but it kept things safe contained. After Jasmine left, Amara sat with the lights off, the glow of her tablet casting long shadows on the wall. She opened her notes app and started typing. Not homework, not messages, just thoughts. "He laughed like I was a joke, not a mistake. An actual joke. Like I said, something ridiculous. And the whole room was in on it. I didn't lie. I didn't even exaggerate. Why is that so hard to believe?" She stared at the screen, then deleted every line. She didn't want the words to exist outside her head. Instead, she opened an old folder of pictures, family one school events. Then her favorite, her mom standing on the Capitol steps, fist raised. One photographer had captured it mid-smile just before a press conference. Jasmine looked like she belonged there. not just belonged, owned the space. Amara remembered how proud she'd been when that picture made the rounds on social media. Some people in her class even reposted it, not realizing that was her mom. But none of them ever asked. None of them ever really knew. And maybe that's what hurt the most. It wasn't that they didn't know. It was that they didn't care to Wednesday after school. She sat at the dining table doing homework while her mom heated leftovers. Jasmine moved around the kitchen like she had something on her mind. Finally, she asked, "You got anything coming up at school assembly class projects?" Amara looked up from her tablet. "I think we have a guest speaker on Friday." "Oh, yeah. Who's coming?" "I don't know. Some government official." I think Jasmine raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's vague." That's what they said. Jasmine grinned, walking over with a plate in hand. "What if it's someone cool? Maybe you'll finally get to see what a congresswoman looks like." Amara gave a small, tired laugh. Yeah, maybe her mom didn't catch the edge in her voice, or maybe she chose not to call it out. Instead, she sat beside her, nudging her shoulder lightly. "Hey, I know middle school can be rough, but remember who you are and whose kid you are, Amara." Met her eyes for a moment. "I know." She whispered she meant it. But she also knew that sometimes, even when you're someone's daughter, the world will treat you like you're invisible. But invisible things have a way of reappearing when the timing's just right. Friday came like any other day, cloudy, ordinary, dragging its feet. Amara sat in homeroom, half awake, head resting on her palm, eyes glazed as the announcements played over the intercom. Her classmates whispered about the guest speaker set to arrive during fourth period. Some said it was a city council member. Others guessed it. It'd be someone boring like the assistant superintendent who always talked about lunch nutrition. No one guessed Congress. Certainly not Jasmine Crockett. When the bell rang for fourth period, Mr. Penley asked the class to line up and follow him down to the auditorium. The hallway buzzed with idle chatter and sneakers squeaking against. Talamaro walked near the backhands in her hoodie pocket earbuds, in without sound. She had no expectations for this assembly, just a hope that it would go fast. Auditorium was already half-filled, other classes filed in teachers them like slow-moving cattle. Amara sat near the aisle, second row from the back, slouching low in her seat. She didn't even glance at the stage where a wooden podium waited under the harsh overhead lights the principal misses. Goodwin stepped up to the mic. "Good morning, students. Today, we're honored to welcome a very special guest from Washington, D.C., someone who's been working hard to represent our state on some of the most important issues affecting young people like you." A few groans rumbled in the audience. Mrs. Goodwin smiled through it. "Please give a warm welcome to United States Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett." It didn't register at first. Amara sat upright, slowly thinking she misheard. But then the doors at the side of the auditorium swung open, and there she was. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett walked in with measured steps, a calm power radiating off her black pantsuit, sharp-cut gold earrings catching the light, a presence that commanded the entire room without saying a word. The room fell silent so fast it was almost jarring. Kids leaned forward. Some whispered to each other, but no one laughed. Not this time. And not when she walked straight down the aisle, not pausing, not scanning the crowd. She already knew exactly where her daughter was. Amara sat frozen, and then her mother stopped beside her, bending just slightly. Jasmine opened her arms, and Amara stood up. In a daze, they hugged, real and full drama. No performance, just love standing tall in front of everyone who ever doubted it. The moment didn't need explanation. It spoke louder than any introduction. Could then Jasmine walked up to the stage, took her place behind the podium, adjusted the mic with steady hands. "Good morning," she said, her voice low and warm. "I hear y'all weren't expecting me." Nervous chuckles rippled across the auditorium. She smiled, not big, not forced, the kind of smile that says, "I know more than I'm saying." "I didn't come here to give you a lecture," she said. "I came here to remind you of something, or maybe to teach it." For the first time she paused, her eyes scanned the room. slow, deliberate. And when they landed on Mr. Penley, even he straightened in his seat. Sometimes we assume we know who someone is based on how they look, or how they speak, or where they sit in the classroom. Her voice stayed calm, even but the truth. His power doesn't always wear a name tag, and dignity doesn't need permission. A few heads nodded now. Some students shifted, uncomfortable, and when someone tells you who they are, believe them. She let the silence settle. Amara felt her heart beating hard in her chest. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was something else. Pride, safety, justice in its quietest form. Jasmine closed her notes. Thank you for listening. No slogans, no applause cues, just truth left hanging in the air like thunder after lightning. But sometimes the loudest lessons don't come from the speaker. They come from the silence that follows. When the assembly ended, there wasn't the usual scramble to the exits. Students sat still, some pretending to stretch or tie their shoes, others whispering, stealing glances at Amara. She didn't look back. She stood calmly holding her backpack against her side, waiting for the crowd to thin her eyes. Found Mr. Penley. He looked different now, not in the way he dressed or stood, but in the way his face didn't quite know what to do. Like he was seeing her for the first time, and unsure how he'd missed it, before Amara didn't need an apology. Not right. Then the silence between them said more than words. Could later that day, just after lunch, Mr. Penley asked her to stay behind while the rest of the class filed out. She considered ignoring him, but something in her said stay. Just this once he stood at his desk, fingers pressed to the edge, voice lowered. Amara, I owe you an apology. She said nothing. Penley still taught the same dry lectures. The posters still peeled on the walls. The desk still wobbled. But when he opened the discussion with what makes a leader credible, his eyes went to Amara. First, she didn't raise her hand. She didn't need to. That day, she listened because now they knew at lunch. Elise scooted over beside her. Your mom was amazing, she whispered. Amara gave a quiet smile. She usually is. There was a pause. Elise looked at her more carefully now. Why didn't you say anything earlier? About what happened? Amara shrugged. Would you have believed me? Elle's face fell. She didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Back home, Jasmine stood at the kitchen sink, peeling Carrot's phone, balanced on her shoulder, already dealing with press requests and committee calls the day hadn't. Slowed down, Amara came and dropped her bag and leaned against the counter. Today was better, she said. Jasmine raised her eyebrows, amused. Yeah, I think Mr. Penley finally figured out who I am. Jasmine smirked, still peeling about time. Amara paused, then said, Thanks for coming. Jasmine looked over her shoulder. You didn't think I would. I didn't want to ask, but I wanted you there. Jasmine set the carrots down, turned around, and gave her daughter a look that was part love, part steel. Baby, I'll always walk into a room for you. Amara blinked fast. Something welled up in her chest again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was light, a kind of release because she'd told the truth. And finally, someone had listened. But some truths once spoken never go quiet again. They echo in classrooms, in homes, in the way we see each other. When we finally choose to look years later, Amara would still remember that frightening morning. Not the speech itself, not even the exact words her mother said. What stayed with her wasn't something you could quote. It was the look on people's faces, the silence. When her mom walked in, the shift in energy, like the air in the room had turned solid. She'd gone on to graduate with honors, got full ride to Howard, majored in political science, even though she hated multiple choice questions. She interned on the Hill, just like her mom once had learned how to walk fast and speak slow. Learned how to listen harder, and every now and then, when someone asked her why she cared so much about truth, about kids, about classrooms, she thought back to that day in middle school. The day she was told without a word that her truth didn't fit the room. but also the day her mom walked in and changed the story. Amara learned something powerful that week. Not from textbooks, not from lectures, but from silence laughter and a hug that rewrote the narrative. You can be right and still be dismissed. You can speak clearly and still be doubted. You can show up with truth and someone will always try to shrink it. But none of that means you're wrong. It just means the room needs to catch up. And sometimes all it takes is one moment, one person, one interruption of the usual. Her mother didn't walk in with an agenda. She didn't bring a banner or security detail. She just brought presence, truth, and a reminder. You don't have to shout to be heard if you walk like you belong for Amara. It was more than just redemption. It was clarity. She would go on to visit classrooms herself, just like her mother. Sit in folding chairs, greet nervous teachers, make jokes to break the tension. And when the kids raised their hands to say who they admired, she would always look for the quiet ones. The ones who hesitated, glanced around before speaking. And when one of them said something that made the room go still, something that felt too bold, too proud, she'd lean forward and say it again. We're listening. Because she knew what it felt like to not be believed. And she knew what it meant when someone finally did. There's a power in walking into a space where no one expects you. But there's a deeper power in making that space. Expect more not just of you, but of themselves. We teach our kids to speak up, to be proud, to tell the truth. But what are we teaching adults? What are we modeling for teachers, for leaders? For anyone who thinks they already know what a congresswoman's daughter should look like, maybe it starts with listening better. Maybe it starts with asking twice instead of assuming once. Maybe it starts with the simple idea that when a child tells you something really tells you, your first job isn't to fact-check, it's to believe. And if you're wrong, you apologize. And if you're right, you still treat their words with care. Because words once dismissed don't just disappear. They bury, they fester, or worse, they teach silence. But Amara never stayed silent. Not then, not ever again, because someone believed in her loud enough for the whole room to hear. And that changed everything. So if you're listening to this, right? Now, ask yourself, who in your life needs to be believed today? And are you really listening or just waiting to reply if this story meant something to you? Take a second to subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that truth doesn't need permission.